So King Charles is supposedly being bullied by Queen Camilla behind palace doors, and the person who finally stepped in to stop it wasn't a therapist, wasn't a senior advisor, wasn't even Charles himself. It was Prince William, who reportedly stripped her of all royal influence after staff secretly sent him a file full of evidence. That's the story that's been going around, and when you actually look at the timeline of what allegedly happened versus how the palace normally operates, there are some things here that either don't add up or reveal way more than the headlines are saying. Before we get into all of it, make sure you're subscribed to Crown Watch so you don't miss any updates on this situation. So here's where this whole thing supposedly starts. The claim is that on the morning of May 3rd, 2025, there was a planning meeting at Clarence House with King Charles, Queen Camilla, and several top advisors. Everything was normal. Papers out, polite conversation, the usual royal business routine. Then around 10:30 in the morning, Camilla allegedly stood up without any warning and just unloaded on Charles in front of everyone. The reports claim she called him weak, spineless, and pathetic, accused him of always siding with Prince William, and said he had no backbone. Now, if that actually happened in a room full of staff and advisors, that's not a private marital disagreement. That's a public demolition of the monarch in front of witnesses whose entire job is to serve the institution. One staff member supposedly described her words as coming out like fire with no filter and no hesitation. Another said it was like she had waited years for that moment. That phrasing is interesting because it suggests this wasn't a sudden outburst. It was something that had been building for a very long time, which makes you wonder what else had been happening behind closed doors that never got reported. The room reportedly went completely still. A senior scheduling officer who had been mid-sentence just froze. Other staff members looked away or pretended to write things down, which is honestly the most realistic detail in this whole story, because anyone who's ever been in a room when someone's boss is getting torn apart knows that exact feeling of wanting to disappear into your notebook. Charles allegedly didn't respond at all. His eyes dropped, his shoulders sank, and people who were there said his face lost all its color. When the meeting ended, Camilla walked out first, and Charles just stayed sitting there like someone had knocked the life out of him. That detail about him not moving, just remaining in his chair while everyone else gathered their things and avoided eye contact, that's the part that makes this feel less like gossip and more like something that might actually leave a mark on people who witnessed it. Now, here's where it gets interesting from a procedural standpoint. One of the advisors who stayed behind apparently decided that what they'd just witnessed couldn't be handled through normal palace channels. So instead of filing a routine report or mentioning it to a superior, they went directly to Prince William's private office at Kensington Palace. They didn't just send a summary either. According to these reports, the file contained time-stamped audio recordings, a list of 7 witnesses, and a complete timeline of everything that happened. That's not a concerned note from a worried employee. That's an evidence package. Someone in that room made the calculation that this incident was serious enough to bypass the entire chain of command and go straight to the air. That decision alone tells you something about how that person viewed the severity of what they'd seen, and probably about how they viewed the likelihood of anyone else in the palace doing something about it. When Prince William received the file that night, he reportedly read through every word, and his anger grew with each line. The sources claim he had always tried to stay respectful around Camilla, not out of genuine warmth, but out of duty and a desire to keep the peace. But this incident apparently changed something fundamental in how he viewed the situation. One insider said he didn't just see an insult to his father, he saw a man broken by the person who was supposed to stand beside him. By the next morning, William had already started making calls, pulling staff into private meetings, collecting notes, and giving orders to build a case. That's not someone reacting emotionally. That's someone who immediately shifted into operational mode, which is consistent with how William has been described by people who've worked with him. He's reportedly methodical, deliberate, and when he decides something needs to happen, he moves fast. Within a week, Camilla allegedly found herself being slowly pushed out of the inner circle. One aide said she didn't even see it coming. One day she was running the room. The next day she was shut out of meetings and decisions. That's actually a very specific and believable description of how institutional power shifts work in environments like the palace. It's rarely a dramatic confrontation. It's usually a quiet removal of access, a gradual exclusion from conversations, an erosion of influence that happens so smoothly the person doesn't realize what's happening until it's already done. The sources claim William wasn't motivated by revenge. He wanted protection for his father, for the institution, and for the future of the monarchy. Whether or not you believe every detail of this story, that framing is consistent with how William has positioned himself publicly over the last few years as someone focused on the long-term stability of the crown. But the story doesn't stop with that initial report. According to these claims, over the next 48 hours, 6 more testimonies came in from staff at Clarence House, St. James's Palace, and Highgrove. People who had stayed silent for over a decade suddenly came forward with their own accounts of Camilla's behavior. A former events coordinator described a pattern where Camilla would snap whenever plans didn't center around her. If an event favored William or Catherine, she would reportedly find ways to tear it down or redirect the focus. Another staff member recalled the logistics briefing in 2024, where Camilla slammed her notes on the table and said, "You all forget who the real queen is." During coronation planning in 2023, she allegedly told the decorator that without her, Charles was just a placeholder king. If even half of these accounts are accurate, we're not talking about isolated incidents of a difficult personality. We're talking about a sustained pattern of behavior that multiple people across different departments at different years all describe in similar terms. One former communications officer said it was all coming together now, that things they had once brushed off individually suddenly formed a clear pattern when viewed together. She ruled through fear, this person said. That's a heavy phrase to use about a consort who technically holds no constitutional power, but anyone who's worked in institutional environments knows that formal authority and actual influence are two completely different things. Someone can have no official power on paper and still control an entire operation through relationships, access, and the fear of what they might say or do if crossed. The shift these sources describe is interesting too. People who had once served Camilla directly were now stepping back. The fear was changing direction. One longtime press aide said that when William read that first report, it was like someone flipped a switch. Suddenly everyone knew it was safe to speak. That suggests there were people who had wanted to say something for years, but didn't believe anything would be done about it until William got involved. Then comes what might be the most significant part of this whole story. On May 6, King Charles allegedly requested a private breakfast with William at Highgrove House. Nothing on the official schedule, no press alerted, just father and son meeting in the sunroom where Charles used to read bedtime stories to a much younger William. But this wasn't a nostalgic family visit. According to sources, Charles finally opened up about what he'd been living with. He reportedly told William that Camilla wasn't kind when no one was watching, that she lashed out, that every time they discussed George or Catherine, she would turn on him. He said it happened often, more than William probably knew, and that she spoke down to him even in front of staff. Then he said something that, if true, is genuinely devastating. "I didn't want to lose her, but I've already lost myself." A butler who passed by the hallway reportedly heard William stand silent for several seconds before responding with a firm tone, "You don't need to keep going through this. You're the king." Staff had apparently noticed strange signs from Charles over the past year. He had been pulling out of appearances without explanation, leaving formal events early, looking blank and distant. One aide recalled a day in March when Charles walked out of a meeting in under 20 minutes and was later found in his study looking drained, like he'd been crying. At the time, people attributed it to stress or health issues. But looking back through the lens of these allegations, those incidents take on a different meaning. Charles allegedly told William that he had always thought Camilla changed, but the truth was he kept changing himself to make things easier for her. That's a painfully common dynamic in relationships, where one person dominates the other, and hearing it described in the context of the actual King of England is jarring regardless of what you think about Charles as a person or a monarch. William reportedly stood up, walked around the table, put his hand on his father's shoulder, and Charles said 4 words, "Do what you must, my son." That moment, if it happened, gave William something no report or audio recording could provide. It gave him his father's explicit permission to act, not just as the future king, but as the only person in a position to fix what was falling apart. Within 24 hours, William allegedly called for an emergency session of the Crown Council. He arrived with a full report, every word Camilla had spoken verified by witnesses and recordings, and one goal: to protect the throne from what he saw as a growing danger. A senior advisor said they'd never seen William like that, completely focused, not asking anyone what to do, already knowing exactly what needed to happen. Another council member remembered William saying, "We're not just saving the crown, we're saving the man who wears it." Everyone in that room understood what that meant. The vote was reportedly unanimous. 12 members of the Crown Council, including representatives from Scotland, Wales, and the Commonwealth Secretariat, all agreed Camilla's ceremonial powers would be removed effective immediately. She would technically remain Queen Consort. through marriage, but she would no longer function as an active royal. No more public engagements, no more royal events. Her seat next to Charles during the state opening of Parliament would go to Princess Anne instead, and a formal transfer letter was drawn up for her 26 patronages. One council member noted that history would remember that day. The decision broke new ground completely. A royal consort stripped of influence, not through scandal or divorce or press leaks, but through official procedural action. That's unprecedented in modern British history. By that evening, William's private secretary reportedly showed up at Clarence House with the official decree. Camilla refused to open the envelope. She wouldn't even look at it, telling her lady-in-waiting, "I won't give them the satisfaction." That night, palace insiders described the atmosphere as historic, but strangely peaceful. One courtier who had worked under 3 different monarchs said it was about time for correction. William chose not to speak to the media afterward. He didn't need to. The crown had spoken through actions, not words. Then things got even more visible to the public, just in a way most people wouldn't immediately notice. By May 10th, sharp-eyed royal watchers started picking up on changes across the monarchy's official websites and social media. Camilla's name, title, and photographs were being moved around, rewritten, or completely removed. A digital media expert described it as watching someone disappear in real time. Her official role was reframed, her biography page edited during overnight hours. Where her title had once read Queen Consort, Public Representative of the Crown, it now simply stated Wife of King Charles III. That's a massive downgrade in status communicated entirely through web copy. The monarchy doesn't make mistakes, one constitutional expert explained. It makes corrections, and these corrections were happening methodically, systematically, across every digital platform the palace controls. By 9/11, according to these reports, the final phase began. Camilla was moved out of her main residence at Clarence House to a property in Wiltshire called Hawthorne Lodge, which had previously been set aside for retired royal staff members. Her staff was cut from 19 people to just 4. Her private protection team was reassigned, leaving only basic surveillance from a rotating local team. All upcoming public appearances were canceled: the October Literacy Gala, the Royal Art Trust dinner, a planned state visit to New Zealand, all gone, with no rescheduling. The official explanation was rest and personal health time, but inside the palace, nobody was buying that. One aide put it bluntly: she wasn't sent away for a break, she was removed. Camilla reportedly made 4 desperate phone calls to palace administration asking to take back her duties, even offering to work in a private capacity only. Every request was turned down. Her emails were filtered through Charles's press office, stripping away all independent communication rights. One staff member made it clear the decision was final: no going back, no return to her old title, no chance for a comeback. This was internal exile, complete and permanent. Charles stayed publicly silent about the whole situation, but privately, sources say he seemed resigned. During a tense phone call, Camilla reportedly pleaded with him, "Don't let them erase me." His response was measured but firm: "I can no longer protect what you've broken." While Camilla faded into the background, William and Catherine's public standing reportedly soared. A YouGov poll showed William's approval rating at 88% and Catherine's at 84%, the highest since 1997. International figures started addressing invitations specifically to the Prince and Princess of Wales, bypassing Camilla entirely. Prime Minister Olivia Hart was spotted having private conversations with William during the UN Climate Summit in Geneva, with insiders confirming that protocol now put him ahead of Charles's own team in certain diplomatic situations. The future has arrived, one diplomatic source stated. Charles, meanwhile, was reportedly caught in an impossible position. Torn between the woman he'd loved for decades and the son who had acted to protect the institution, he was described as looking like he was carrying the weight of the world. He would lock himself in his study for hours, reading and rereading the speech William had delivered to the Crown Council. He wanted to defend Camilla publicly, to explain what she meant to him, but he knew that any move he made could bring the whole house of cards down. William hadn't broken any rules. He'd acted through proper channels with government backing. Trying to undo it would cause serious backlash against the entire institution. Charles barely spoke during meetings, just nodded and gave short replies. His health showed signs of strain. He looked thinner, his face had lost color, his steps seemed slower. Palace doctors suggested rest, but he refused. He was afraid that if he stepped back, he wouldn't be able to step back in. By June 2025, the reports claimed Charles made the most consequential decision of his reign. He called his closest advisors together and placed a handwritten letter on the table. "This is the hardest thing I've ever had to write." he reportedly said. The letter contained his decision to step back from active royal duties, effective immediately. He would keep his title as king, but William would take over all day-to-day operations of the monarchy. The transition had been planned over several weeks of private discussions. Charles had come to terms with the reality that his reign had been irreparably damaged by the Camilla crisis. He could either fight against the tide and risk destroying the institution, or hand control to someone the public trusted. Sometimes the bravest thing a king can do is know when to step aside, a royal historian reflected. The public announcement sent shockwaves across Britain and around the world. News channels interrupted regular programming. Social media platforms temporarily crashed. Prime Minister Hart released a statement within hours expressing full support. Charles reportedly called Camilla personally to explain his decision before it went public. The conversation lasted over 2 hours. Emotional, difficult, but necessary for both of them to find some kind of closure. They both knew this day was coming, a family insider said. They just hoped it wouldn't come so soon. Within days, William set up his new operations center at St. James's Palace, while Catherine began taking on major patronages that had been left vacant. The royal website was restructured, with William and Catherine's photographs dominating the homepage, while Charles appeared in a smaller emeritus section. The changes were swift and decisive. The institution that had seemed on the brink of collapse just months earlier was now stronger and more popular than it had been in decades. The crown had been transformed not through revolution or scandal, but through careful decision-making and strong leadership. William and Catherine hadn't just inherited the future of the monarchy, they had earned it through their actions during the crisis. Then came the interview moment that got everyone talking all over again. Several weeks after the transition, William sat down for his first major television appearance as the de facto leader of the monarchy. During the conversation, he briefly mentioned his father's health, and almost as a casual side note said that Charles appeared much more content living by himself lately. It sounded relaxed and natural, but the reaction was anything but small. A body language expert who studied the footage said it wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. Something understated but pointed. The timing felt incredibly deliberate. Rumors about Charles and Camilla had already been spreading, and when William casually dropped that comment about his father enjoying his own space, many people felt it wasn't an innocent remark. He was giving the public a hint without spelling it out directly. People immediately started wondering if Charles and Camilla were no longer living under the same roof. The pieces seemed to fit together. Charles dealing with health issues and staying out of the public eye, then William mentioning that his father was doing better on his own. If William had wanted to shut down the rumors, he could have easily said something positive about Camilla or spoken about their relationship being strong. He chose not to. Photographers positioned themselves near all the royal homes. Camera crews tracked cars and watched entrance gates. Every public appearance was analyzed like evidence in a court case. The media circus went into overdrive. The situation also brought back old memories for a lot of people. The parallels to the Diana years were impossible to ignore. Years ago, Diana had lived through a period where she felt emotionally cut off from Charles, while his attention was focused elsewhere. Now, some people were pointing out that Charles might be experiencing something remarkably similar. What goes around comes around. One viral social media post declared, Camilla, once the woman who had stayed in the background during the Diana years, was now being seen smiling in public while Charles remained mostly indoors under tremendous pressure. The irony wasn't lost on anyone who remembered those days. The media coverage didn't hold back. With headlines growing more dramatic by the day and public comments becoming increasingly critical, people were pointing out what they saw as poetic justice. What Charles had once put Diana through, he was now experiencing himself. That idea gave the story emotional weight that went far beyond simple royal gossip. It had become about justice and karma, about history coming full circle, about a man who had once broken someone's heart, now having his own heart broken in turn. The story had grown from whispers and online rumors into a major topic across every platform imaginable. And honestly, whether every detail of these reports is accurate or not, the fact that this narrative has taken hold so completely tells you something about what people are ready to believe about this family and this institution.